Right, well, first off, can I start by just saying congratulations for writing such a lovely composition. We've
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed singing it, and it's been a great piece of music to add to our repertoire. So, in terms of where you start from with a new composition, do you tend to start from the point of view of the lyrics, or from a melody, or were you particularly inspired by the topics? And where do the ideas for the composition come from?
Sure. So I typically start with the text. I think that for me, at least, that's usually the strongest place to start, because it really just informs all of the kind of the sound world and melodic ideas. And just if anything in the text really stands out, then I can automatically make sure I include that musically.
So, for Where Sky Meets Sea, where did the text come from? It's a poem that already existed, is that right?
Well, this is actually the first collaboration with a friend of mine that I'm in a university choir with, and I'm she's studying writing in English and knew that she wrote poetry a lot, and so I contacted her and said, "Hey, I don't know if you've ever done this before, but would you be interested in writing lyrics for a new piece?" And so now, since then, we've done two additional pieces together, and so it's an original text by my friend Margaret Kirby, a very, very gifted writer. Mhm.
How long did the whole composition process take you? And did you sort of see it and then start work immediately, or is it something that you need to live with for a little bit before you can really start writing?
Sure. So this one is actually a little bit unique in that it's probably a more condensed time than I usually write in. I typically take about a month and a half, 2 months to really kind of feel at home with it, but just the nature of having more time to commit to it during quarantine and that sort of thing. It ended up being about 3 weeks, I think, but just really wholly investing and being able to spend time thinking about it and working on it. So,
And is there a clear point for you where it's definitely finished, or is it something that you just kind of would keep revising and it's hard to know when to let go a little bit?
yeah, it's always a little bit different, I think, for each piece. I usually try my best to, at the front side of things, to make sure that I've laid out a basic skeleton of the piece and really know where I'm going before, so I can say, okay, I've reached this mark, so I can at least start revisions. But I say that I usually do, 2 or 3 revisions, just making sure that the lines are singable and approachable and or at least somewhat satisfying, hopefully for the singers.
So when you finished a piece like Where Sky Meets Sea, do you try and sing through the individual lines yourself, so you sort of know, well, if I can sing it, then probably they can sing
Right.
it as well?
Because if I can't sing it after writing it, then I sure can't necessarily count on someone else to be able to.
Have you composed a lot of choral music, or is this a relatively new venture for you?
I would say, as the overall compositional journey, I didn't really start writing until maybe 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and most of it has been choral. I have done some string quartet and solo instrumental work and kind of wind ensemble, but I would say a good 80% of my writing is just choral because that's just kind of at most home for me. So.
Okay. So are you a sort of a voice as first instrument person, or do you play other instruments as well?
I play piano and French horns, so I definitely have a background in both. But choral's just kind of what I've been around most, and writing for voice is just a very special thing for me.
Thinking about the other compositions that you've done, are there any sort of particular musical features that appear a lot in your music? So, like if you were listening to Whitaker, you hear all those ninths, and you kind of go, "Oh, maybe this is Eric Whitaker." Do you have any kind of like signature like that that tends to pop up in your music, or are you still quite broad in your composing?
I would say that I tend to gravitate towards kind of the richer harmonies and voicings and that side of thing. But just being on the younger side, I definitely, with each piece, am trying to kind of stretch a little bit more one way or the other. Of, there's some more rhythmic things I can work here, or let me try to use more unison, less harmony here. So just kind of setting out a new goal for each piece, I guess.
And in terms of you developing as a composer, is that something that you've had a lot of sort of outside influence with? Like, have you had the opportunity to sort of do workshops and have your pieces worked on, or is it very much still an individual pursuit where you're just doing each piece in isolation?
Right. I I was able to have some private study with a professor at Stanford for, I guess, 2.5-ish years, and so that was a very big part of really just learning the basic structure and getting kind of weekly workshops of pieces there. But um, last year, I was able to create a recital that was both arrangements and compositions by myself that I was able to then conduct a choir of my friends and colleagues from the university choir, and workshop that, and edit things as I'm going if I needed to, and figure out what works and what doesn't. So that was a big growing experience for me as a composer.
So,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the piece as a whole, do you have a particular favourite lyric or a particular favourite musical moment?
I would say actually my I think my favorite musical moment also overlaps with my favorite moment in the lyrics, and it's the portion that's I have caught glimpses of this place as we traveled here in time. As this horizon is displaced, we reach a new distant line. And I think, even then, when we were only maybe a year or two and kind of to the new pandemic world, so to speak, and now looking back, just kind of the whole idea of the horizon being displaced as we reach a new distant line, of kind of this idea of expectation, and it may not always turn out or be what we think it is, but there's always something else that we can look forward to or kind of motivate ourselves towards.